My name is James Crawford. I'm 100 years old. At Midway, I loaded the torpedoes onto 15 planes and watched them take off. One came back. I wasn't the one who flew. I wasn't the one who died. I was the one who armed the bombs and stood on the deck, waiting. I've been standing there for 84 years. 15 planes took off from the deck of our carrier that morning. One came back. One. The pilot's name was George Gay. He was floating in the water with a seat cushion, hiding under a piece of debris so the Japanese ships wouldn't see him. And from that spot in the ocean, he watched the entire battle. He watched his friends die, and he watched America win. And he floated there for 30 hours before someone pulled him out. I wasn't on those planes. I was on the deck crew. My job was to arm the torpedoes, to load the weapons onto aircraft and send those boys into the sky, and then stand there and wait for them to come home. Most of them didn't come home, and I'm the one who put the weapons on their planes. I've carried that for 84 years.
James, I'm so glad you're here with us today, and I want you to know, this story matters. So tell me, what was it like standing on that deck waiting for them to come back?
The sunrise. I know that sounds strange, but the Pacific at dawn. The sky goes from black to purple to orange, and the ocean reflects it, and for about 10 minutes, the whole world looks like it's on fire. I was on the deck of the USS Hornet, and I watched that sunrise and I thought, this might be the last beautiful thing I ever see. We knew something was coming. The code breakers back in Hawaii had cracked the Japanese communications. We knew they were heading for Midway. We knew roughly when and where. What we didn't know was whether we'd win. The Japanese had more carriers, more planes, more experience. They'd been dominating the Pacific for 6 months since Pearl Harbor. We were the underdogs. Nobody said it, but everyone knew it. I was 17 years old. I'd lied about my age to enlist after Pearl Harbor. My mother signed the papers. I think she thought the war would be over before I got anywhere near it. It wasn't. 6 months later, I was standing on the flight deck of an aircraft carrier, loading Mark 13 torpedoes onto TBD Devastator torpedo bombers. The Devastator. Even the name sounds wrong now. It was supposed to be devastating. It was obsolete, slow, underpowered, and carrying a torpedo that was unreliable. The Mark 13 had a failure rate that nobody wanted to talk about. Some estimates say 30 to 40% of those torpedoes either missed, ran too deep, or didn't detonate. We were sending boys into the sky with weapons that might not work against a Navy that was better than ours. Torpedo Squadron 8. That's the unit I supported. 15 aircraft. The squadron leader was Lieutenant Commander John Waldron. He was from South Dakota, part Sioux, a tough, quiet man who had this way of looking at you that made you feel like he was reading your entire life in 3 seconds. The night before the battle, Waldron wrote a message to his squadron. I didn't read it then. I read it years later. He wrote, "If there is only one plane left to make a final run in, I want that man to go in and get a hit." He knew. He knew they were flying into something most of them wouldn't come back from. And he said it plainly, not with drama, not with speeches, just a quiet statement of fact. We're probably going to die, so let's make it count. The morning of June 4th, the order came. The air group launched. Fighters, dive bombers, torpedo bombers, all of them. But something went wrong, almost immediately. The fighter escort and the dive bombers lost contact with the torpedo squadrons. Waldron and his 15 Devastators were heading toward the Japanese fleet alone. No fighter cover. No dive bombers to split the enemy's attention. 15 slow planes carrying unreliable torpedoes flying straight at 4 Japanese aircraft carriers surrounded by dozens of escort ships and hundreds of anti-aircraft guns and a sky full of Japanese Zero fighters. I was on the deck when they launched. I watched every single plane take off. I knew the pilots. Not all of them well, but I knew their faces. I'd loaded their torpedoes. I'd checked their planes. One of them, a kid named Bill Evans, he was maybe 19. He gave me a thumbs up as he climbed into his cockpit. He had freckles. I remember the freckles. That's what stays, not the big things, the small things, the freckles, and the thumbs up, and the way his harness looked too loose. Bill didn't come back. None of them came back, except George Gay. They flew straight at the Japanese fleet, and the Zeros tore them apart. 15 planes, 14 shot down. Every torpedo either missed or malfunctioned. From a military standpoint, the attack was a complete failure. Every plane lost, no hits scored. But here's what the history books say that I didn't understand until years later. Torpedo Squadron 8's sacrifice pulled the Japanese fighter cover down to sea level. Every Zero was chasing Waldron's planes, flying low, burning fuel, and at that exact moment, the American dive bombers arrived from above, from 2 different directions, with no coordinated plan. By pure chance, the dive bombers from the Enterprise and the Yorktown appeared over the Japanese fleet at the one moment when there was no fighter cover above the carriers. The Zeros were all down low, killing Waldron's men. In 5 minutes, the dive bombers destroyed 3 Japanese carriers. 5 minutes. The entire war in the Pacific turned in 5 minutes. And it turned because 15 men in obsolete planes flew into certain death and pulled the enemy's eyes downward.
This is extremely shocking. 15 men didn't turn the war around by surviving. They turned it around by dying in exactly the right direction. And you've been living with that ever since. How did you carry that with you after the war?
I loaded the torpedoes. That was my job. I armed the weapons and sent those boys off. And then I stood on the deck and waited. The waiting is the part nobody talks about. After a strike launches, the deck crew has nothing to do but wait. You stand there and you watch the sky and you count. How many went out? How many are coming back? You listen for the radio. You hear fragments, static, shouting, sometimes just silence. The silence is worst. When Gay came back, when they pulled him out of the water the next day, he was sunburned and dehydrated, and he was the only one. Out of 30 men in those 15 planes, 1 survived. 1. I had checked those torpedoes. I had armed them, and they didn't work. At least some of them didn't work. And I know rationally that the torpedo failures weren't my fault. The Mark 13 was a faulty weapon. Everyone knew it. The Bureau of Ordnance knew it. The problem was systemic, not personal. But rationality doesn't help at 3 a.m. when you're thinking about Bill Evans giving you a thumbs up and then flying off to die with a torpedo that might have been a dud. I came home after the war, married a woman named Patricia. We had 4 children. I became an electrician. Normal life. And I never told Patricia about June 4th. Not in detail. She knew I was at Midway. She knew I was in the Navy. But she didn't know about the thumbs up, or the freckles, or the waiting. I went to a reunion once, in the 1960s. Midway veterans. George Gay was there. He was telling the story the way he always told it. The floating, the hiding, watching the Japanese carriers burn. People loved the story. It was dramatic, heroic, incredible. And it was all true. But I couldn't stay. I left the reunion early. I drove home and I sat in my garage and I didn't move for 2 hours. Because George's story was about what he saw from the water. My story was about what I did on the deck. I put the torpedoes on the planes. I sent them out. And they didn't come back. Patricia found me in the garage. She said, "Jim, what's wrong?" And I said, "Nothing, just tired." And she knew I was lying, and I knew she knew, and we both just let it sit there between us like a wall. That wall stayed up for 53 years. Patricia died in 2014, and the wall was still there when she went. They call Midway one of the greatest naval victories in history, and it was. It changed the entire war. If we'd lost at Midway, Japan controls the Pacific, and the war goes on for years longer and maybe ends differently. But 15 boys died for that victory. 15 from my squadron alone. And their names are on memorials and in history books, and people read them and feel proud, and then turn the page. I don't turn the page. I can't. I'm still on that deck, watching the sky, counting planes that aren't coming back. And here's what I need you to understand. You don't have to be the one flying the plane to carry the weight. You don't have to be the one pulling the trigger. Sometimes the heaviest thing you carry is knowing you are part of a machine. You turned a bolt. You loaded a weapon. You did your small piece. And somewhere downstream, someone died. I know that's not a comfortable thought. It's not meant to be. What I want you to take from this is simpler than you think. Tell people what they mean to you before they take off. Not after. Before. Bill Evans gave me a thumbs up and I nodded. I should have said something. I should have said, "Bill, you're brave, and I'm scared for you, and I hope that torpedo works, and I hope you come back." It would have taken 10 seconds. I've had 84 years to wish I'd used them. You have people in your life who are about to take off. Maybe not in a plane. Maybe it's a new job or a hard conversation or a battle with an illness or just another ordinary day that could be their last ordinary day. You don't know. You never know. Say the thing. Say it now. Don't nod. Don't give a thumbs up and assume there'll be time later. 15 planes went out. 1 came back. You don't get to choose which one you are. But you get to choose what you say before you go. Bill, if you can hear me, I'm sorry I didn't say it then. I'm saying it now. You were brave. The torpedo wasn't your fault. And I thought about your freckles every day for 84 years.